very happy to be at the Buddhist Library again. I was just telling Bhante Jyoti, who I had a chance to speak with, that when I first came to live in Singapore in 1987, the very first Dharma talk I gave was at the old Buddhist Library. So, long connection. This was in 1987. Long connection with the Buddhist Library and with Bhante. And so I really appreciate being able to come back and share the Dharma with you here, because the Buddhist Library has been a really stable source of the Buddha Dharma, and very open-minded, non-sectarian, inclusive of different Buddhist traditions. So it's quite wonderful and a big asset to Singapore. So today we're talking about Nirvana. Yeah? But before we talk about Nirvana, we're just talking about it because we're not at the level of actualizing it yet. Yeah, so we'll talk. Yeah. Hopefully, sometime we will be ready to actualize Nirvana, and then we won't need to talk about it so much. But right now, we need to learn what it is and how to attain it, and what to practice, what to abandon. Yeah, so we need words and language, so that eventually we can go beyond words and languages. Okay? But first, as you know, I always like to sit quietly with people and let our minds settle before we engage in a Dharma talk. So we'll just do a little bit of breathing meditation. Yeah, so simply watch your breath. Let your breathing pattern be normal and natural. Stay focused on the breath. It's after lunch, so do not fall asleep. It's not a sleeping meditation. Okay? If you are tending towards drowsiness, keep your eyes a little bit open, but not really looking anything, just down here. But let some light into your eyes, and that will prevent drowsiness. So we'll just have a short meditation to do that. generate them in our hearts, extending goodwill, compassion, joy, open-heartedness to each and every living being, no matter who they are, no matter how they treat us. And with the aspiration to make our lives meaningful for the Buddha Dharma and meaningful for sentient beings, then let's listen and share the teachings together this afternoon, learning about Nirvana, so that we can actualize it and be of the greatest benefit to all living beings that we can. So make that the motivation for being here this afternoon. So there's a lot to mention about Nirvana, but what I thought I'd do first is talk about how it is possible to attain Nirvana, and especially full awakening, the Nirvana of a Buddha. And to do that, I'm going to give you a secret preview of a book that I'm working on with His Holiness the Dalai Lama that hasn't been published yet. So you can't have copies of it, but I'm going to read some of it. So it's this sneak preview only for you, because it won't be out for a while yet. But His Holiness has some really wonderful ways of explaining why Nirvana and awakening are possible to attain. And I think this is very helpful for us in giving us, first of all, the confidence that we can attain Nirvana, and secondly, the confidence that Nirvana actually exists. Yeah, because we can't see it with our eyes. We can't measure it with scientific instruments. So sometimes we may go, well, how do we know it's even possible? Yeah, is this just something we have to accept on blind belief because the Buddha said so? And no, there are reasons to explain why attaining Nirvana is possible. Okay? So, one of the chief reasons, is that right now let's start even before that. The way things appear to us right now, they appear as if they have their own inherent essence. And when we think I, the way we appear to ourselves, is as if there were a real person somewhere in the body-mind complex. We've never stopped to really investigate who that person is or what that person is. But on a day-to-day basis, we function very much grasping on to the existence of a real person that we are. Like you have the feeling I, right? Do you have the feeling I? And sometimes, like if somebody blames you for something that you didn't do, is the feeling of I even stronger than usual? It is. Why are they blaming me? I didn't do anything wrong. Yeah. Or if you really want something, is the feeling of I stronger? I want this so badly. So there's that feeling of an independent I. But we've never stopped to examine if the way the I appears to us is actually the way we exist. Yeah. We just take it for granted that there's a real person somewhere mixed in with our body and mind, an independent person. Yeah. That doesn't depend on any other factors, not causes and conditions, not parts, not the conceptual mind or names, nothing. It's independent, like a real self or a real soul. And that's what they believed in ancient India, that there was, each of us had an independent soul that was who we really were. And even though they believed in rebirth, they said there is this soul that just picks up out of this body and drops into another body. And this is one of the things that the Buddha was renowned for, is he said, sorry folks, or rather, good news folks, such a permanent independent soul or self does not exist. Now, what is the problem with thinking that such a soul or self exists? Yeah. What's the problem? Well, first of all, we're believing that something exists that doesn't exist. So already, you can see there's some problems. But especially with thinking the I, the self, has some independent essence that it doesn't have. What results from that is that then our whole take on life becomes, there's this big I, and I want to be happy. So then I want all these things that are going to make me happy. And even if I have to step on other people's rights, even if I have to harm other people, it doesn't matter because I want this. And then when our wants are frustrated, then again there's this feeling of this big I. My wants are frustrated. I can't stand that. This person is getting in my way. And then we get angry. Yeah. And this is how war starts. Okay. So the fact that we misapprehend who we are, and we actually misapprehend how other things exist, this is the root cause of our trouble. Yeah, because due to this ignorant misapprehension, then we have attachment, anger, all sorts of other mental afflictions, wrong views, disturbing emotions, and so on. And then due to those, then we act mentally, verbally, physically. So that is karma. Yeah, our actions leave it's not a really good word, but like an energy trace, we call them a seed of karma or an imprint of karma. And that influences what we will become in the future. And so this cycle of life called samsara continues to turn. Now, what's wrong with being born in samsara? Well, nothing's wrong with it if you enjoy being born, getting old, growing, getting sick, and dying. But anybody enjoy that? Yeah? No, getting sick is not our favorite thing. Yeah, getting old, that's not in the top 10 either. And dying is like, I don't want to talk about that. Okay? But as long as we have this ignorant view, then this cycle of rebirth continues. Okay, so it's rooted in ignorance. Now, the question comes, can ignorance be eliminated once and for all so that it never exists again? Yeah. The good news is yes. Yeah. Because ignorance misapprehends how things exist. Yeah. Ignorance is a wrong consciousness, an erroneous consciousness. It sees things in the wrong way. Yeah, because in fact, things exist dependent on other factors. When we say I depends on our body and mind. There's no independent I. Yeah. The I is something that is designated in dependence upon the body and mind coming together. When we look at anything, especially things we're attached to, they come about due to causes and conditions. So they're not self-powered. They're under the power of causes and conditions. So they're dependent. They're not independent. Okay? So the Buddha talked a lot about dependent origination or dependent arising, really emphasizing again and again that things do not have their own essence, but they depend on other factors that are not them. When we say Buddhist library, is there some concrete thing that is the Buddhist library? Yeah. If so, what is it? Is it the front of the building? Is it the back of the building? Is it the library? Is it the floor? Is it the ceiling? We can't, when we analyze, we can't find some independent thing that is the Buddhist library. Yeah. What we find is that due to causes and conditions, many people's interests, many people's effort, yeah, that then a building, came about, and the building itself has many parts. But the building itself is not Buddhist library. And the people in the building are not the Buddhist library. But somehow the Buddhist library depends on the building and the people being together. But we can't find anything that is the Buddhist library. Okay, so what we're getting at is that things exist dependent on many factors, and being dependent, they cannot be independent, because dependent and independent are contradictory. Okay? So, when we generate wisdom that sees reality, we see that things are dependent. We see that there is no independent I, independent Buddhist library, independent anything. Yeah. And so that wisdom, because it sees things as they actually are, in other words, they are empty of independent existence. So that wisdom, when it is mobilized in the mind, manifest in the mind, then ignorance cannot be manifest in the mind at the same time. And the more we get familiar with the view of reality, the more the ignorant view cannot stand up. Yeah? And eventually it's completely overcome and eliminated. So when ignorance is eliminated, then wrong views, disturbing emotions, all the karma we create under their influence, all the dukkha, or suffering we experience as a result, all of those things stop. So that is how it's possible for nirvana to be attained, because the ignorance can be overcome. Okay? And nirvana is one way to talk about nirvana. There's many ways to talk about it, but one way is that it is the elimination of ignorance, anger, attachment, all the other afflictions, in such a way that they can never return again. Okay? So once you've eliminated them, once the wrong view of ignorance is completely demolished, then there's nothing left that causes ignorance to re-arise. Yeah. So then the lights go on and we attain awakening. Da, 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 da. Very good, thank you. Okay. So, yeah. So, you know, this may be the first time you've heard this kind of logical argument, but if you study it, you go over it many, many times, it begins to make some sense, and you begin to really gain some confidence that nirvana exists and it's possible to attain it. Yeah? And so because we have the ability to generate this wisdom, and the wisdom overcomes the ignorance, then we too have the ability to attain nirvana. Okay? And having that kind of confidence really changes our life, because then instead of thinking, you know, oh, I'm just little old me, oh, you know, we feel like, oh, there's something really meaningful and purposeful that I can do with my life. Because if it's possible to stop this cycle of samsara once and for all, hey, let's do it. Yeah? Because who wants to continue to get born old, sick, and die, and then get born old, sick, and get born old? We've done that since beginningless time. Yeah? So we need to try something new. Because the search for nirvana is basically the search for enduring happiness, for enduring peace, for fulfillment that doesn't dissipate. Yeah? And every living being has that wish for happiness and internal peace, don't we? So if there exists a state of that kind of peace and fulfillment, and there's a way to attain it, then let's do that. Yeah? Instead of, you know, going to the pub and going to the disco and working overtime and, you know, gambling and drinking and, you know, talking with our friends until midnight. Let's do something that's a little bit more, or a lot more, meaningful in the long term. Now, when we talk about nirvana, there's different kinds of nirvana, so to speak. Okay? So we talk about natural nirvana. This is from the viewpoint of the Sanskrit tradition. There's natural nirvana, there's nirvana with remainder, nirvana without remainder, and non-abiding nirvana. Okay, 4 kinds. Natural nirvana refers to the emptiness of independent or inherent existence. You know, what the object that wisdom realizes. That's called natural nirvana, yeah, because it's unfabricated, it's not made, it's the natural way that all persons and phenomena exist. And realizing it brings forth the actual nirvana. Okay? So natural nirvana is more, it's not actually a kind of nirvana. It refers to emptiness. Okay? But the term nirvana is used for it. Then you have nirvana with and without remainder. And these are described differently in the Pali tradition and the Sanskrit tradition. In the Pali tradition, yeah, when somebody becomes an arhat, they've eliminated ignorance and the afflictions, and any karma to cause rebirth can no longer ripen. Okay. So, but the arhats still have the remainder of their polluted body that they were born with in that last lifetime when they attain liberation. Okay? So it said that they have nirvana with remainder, the remainder being the body, the polluted body. Polluted means that it was taken under the influence of ignorance. Yeah? So when the arhat, before he or she became an arhat, they were born with this kind of flesh and blood body. And that body doesn't change when you become an arhat. The mind changes. So there's still the remainder. It's called nirvana with remainder. Then after that arhat dies, yeah, they leave this body, and that's called nirvana without remainder. Okay? Because they no longer have this flesh and blood body that was taken under the influence of ignorance. Okay? In the Sanskrit tradition, they define remainder a little bit differently. Okay? So let me see how to. So in the Pali tradition, first you have nirvana with remainder, then you have nirvana without remainder. In the Sanskrit tradition, first the arhat has nirvana without remainder, and then they have nirvana with remainder. But here, remainder does not refer to the polluted body, this thing. It refers to the false appearance of independent or inherent existence. So when the arhat eliminates all the afflictions, they are in a state of deep meditation. It's called meditative equipoise on emptiness. At that time, when they're meditating, the object of their meditation is the nature of reality, which is the absence of independent existence. It's the absence of all the fantasized ways of existence that our ignorance has projected on people and things. So that the remainder there is the false appearance. So first, the arhats has nirvana without remainder, because they're in meditative equipoise and they don't have any false appearances. When they come out of their meditation, then things still appear to them in a false way, but they no longer buy into it. Yeah, they realize it's a false appearance. So that is called nirvana with remainder, because they still have the false appearance of independent existence, even though they don't buy into it. Okay? With me so far? So we've covered 3 of the 4. The last one is called non-abiding nirvana. And this is the nirvana of a Buddha. Okay? So the Buddha is called an arhat, but the Buddha's nirvana is something special. It's not exactly like the nirvana of an arhat. This is from the viewpoint of the Sanskrit tradition. Okay? Because a Buddha is omniscient, a Buddha has special powers and abilities to benefit sentient beings. So when we say non-abiding nirvana, it means a Buddha does not abide in samsara, and a Buddha also does not abide in what we call self-complacent peace. So self-complacent peace is when you've attained nirvana for your own benefit, and you've stopped the cycle of rebirth, you have compassion, but your compassion isn't strong enough yet to make you appear in samsara again to benefit other living beings. Yeah, so that's self-complacent peace. So a fully awakened Buddha doesn't abide in samsara or in this self-complacent peace. Okay? Plus, a Buddha, unlike a regular arhat, is omniscient. A Buddha knows all phenomena in the past, present, and future. Now we may wonder, how is it possible to know all phenomena in the past, present, and future? Yeah. First of all, does that mean things are predetermined? If the Buddha knows the future, does that mean things are predetermined? No. Okay. Because things still come about under the influence of causes and conditions, and we don't really know what the present is going to be until it happens. So just because the Buddha knows the future, it doesn't mean that he sees what the future is going to be before it's happened. It means that he sees all the causes and conditions that could come into play to make various futures happen. Okay. Now, I promise to read to you from the book. Is it in print? Yeah. So I wanted to read, this is Holiness the Dalai Lama explains, how nirvana, how it's possible to attain the nirvana of a Buddha and become omniscient. Okay, so he talks here about the mind's potential. Okay, so I'm going to read to you and then I'll stop and comment. Okay. So I just want to say, I realize there's a lot of technical material in the talk I'm giving, but I'm trying to give you some deeper understanding of what nirvana is. And yes, you'll have to study it and go over it, and it'll take some effort. Yeah, but I'm hoping it will help you in the end. Okay, so His Holiness says, as sentient beings, in other words, beings with minds that are still obscured, we have great potential, our greatest potential being to become fully awakened Buddhas, omniscient beings who have the wisdom, compassion, power, and skillful means to be of the greatest benefit to all. A natural quality of the mind is its ability to cognize objects. Okay, when we talk about the mind or consciousness, it's defined as that which is clear and cognizant. So clear means it doesn't have form, it can reflect objects. Cognizant means it knows objects. So that's what the mind is. Yeah, it's clarity and cognizance. And that's the nature of mind, in the same way that hot and burning is the nature of fire. Okay? So you can't take that ability to know objects away from the mind. Okay? So this capacity to be aware and to know objects is always present. It does not have to be newly cultivated. Nevertheless, various obstructions can inhibit the mind from cognizing objects. When these are eliminated, the mind will have no difficulty knowing all phenomena. And now he's going to talk about different kinds of obstructions that we may have to knowing. So one type of obstruction is physical matter. So a wall obstructs us from seeing what is beyond. When the wall is removed, our visual consciousness can see what is there. Okay? So one obstruction to knowing phenomena is simply a physical obstruction. I don't know what's on the other side of the wall. I don't know what's below the floor. If you remove the wall, then I can know what's there. If you cut a hole in the floor, and please don't, but then I can know what's below. Okay, so that's one type. A second obscuration is distance and size. The object is too far away or too small for our cognitive faculties to come in contact with it. Telescopes and microscopes have helped alleviate this difficulty in some cases. Okay, so we can't see tiny bacteria, but if we use, because they're so small, if we use a microscope, we can see them. We can't see the moons around Jupiter, can we? I don't think we can. Anybody know? I don't remember seeing the moons around Jupiter with my eyes, but if you have a telescope, then you can. Okay? So, size and distance. Okay, in those cases, we know the object not because the mind has become clearer and better able to apprehend the object, but because the object is brought within the range of our operable cognitive faculties. Okay? So that's how we can see what's on the other side of the wall, see what's very small, see what's very big. A third difficulty concerns the cognitive faculties that are the basis of consciousness. So cognitive faculties mean like the rods and cone on the retina that enable us to see, what do you call it in your ear, the hammer and spur or something? Anybody know? Come on, we learned this in primary 4, and now we can't remember it, can we? Okay, but that, the ability, the things, sense powers in the nose that can detect smells, on the tongue, things. Okay, so those are the cognitive faculties. Okay, so those are the bases of consciousness. The visual consciousness is able to perceive only visible forms, not sounds or other phenomena, because it is dependent on the eye faculty. Yeah? The eye can't hear sounds. Yeah? Because it depends on the eye faculty, the rods and cones on the retina. Okay? If a healthy eye faculty is absent, the visual consciousness cannot perceive visible forms. Okay, so if for some reason there's injury to the eye, and the rods and cones and that whole thing is messed up, then we can't see things because there's a problem with the eye faculty. With me so far? Okay, this part isn't so hard. The type of brain a being has also influences what a being can perceive. A mental faculty dependent on an animal brain and one dependent on a human brain can have different ranges of understandable objects. Due to the complexity of the brains of these two beings, the mental faculties and consciousnesses dependent on them differ in what they can perceive and understand. Okay? So that's one of our great fortunes in being born human beings this life, is we have a human brain, and that physical organ, especially the frontal cortex, gives us the ability to use language, to communicate with each other, to teach each other, to think about things conceptually. And so human beings have quite a remarkable intelligence if we use it properly. Okay? Animals, not so much. We have the expression bird brain, yeah? Meaning somebody who's not so intelligent. At the Shrivasti Abbey where I live, we have a lot of wild turkeys. I now really understand the expression bird brain, because you watch the turkeys and they have bird brains. They're really not very smart. Okay. For example, what turkeys will do is we have a garden with a fence around it so that the deer don't come in and eat the vegetables and flowers. So the turkeys will sometimes, in the winter we keep the gate open so that some turkeys walk into the garden, some turkeys fly over the fence because the fence is, they can easily fly over. But when they get in the garden, and then one turkey goes out. Turkeys they like to be together with others. They do not like to be alone. They completely freak out when they're alone. So one turkey goes out, then the other turkeys try and follow that turkey. Yeah. So the fence is here. The open gate is right here. The last turkey, or the last few turkeys to go out, they're totally freaked out. They want to be with their friends. So they run around the edge of the fence on the inside. They run up to the edge, right where the open gate is. But instead of walking out the gate, they turn around and walk back along the fence. And cluck because they can't get out the gate. They can't get out of the garden. Yeah, so they walk right up to where the hole is and they can get out, and then they turn around and run back. Now you understand why they say bird brain. Yeah, because they're not too smart. You know, they could go right through the open gate. Yeah. They could fly right over the fence. They run around the edge of the fence, back and forth, for 5 or 10 minutes, freaked out, clucking, until suddenly something happens, and oh, I can fly over the fence. Or I can go out the door, you know. Oh, duh. Yeah? Okay? So what His Holiness is getting at here is the kind of brain we have as human, you know, as living beings, also can influence what we can cognize and what we can understand. So I don't mean to be disrespectful to turkeys. I respect them. Yeah. We don't kill them for Thanksgiving. Yeah. They all come stay with us for Thanksgiving and Christmas because they know they'll be safe. Okay. Okay, so the type of brain, that also influences. Then another thing is, furthermore, a mind proliferating with wrong views and overwhelmed with disturbing emotions is too distracted and preoccupied to turn its attention to other objects. The range of what such a mental state can know becomes very limited. So we may have a human brain, but you know how it is when we get very emotional, or when somebody holds very strong wrong views. I mean, take the state, when you get very, very emotional, when you're upset, can you think clearly? No. When you hold very strong wrong views, do you have an open mind that can consider other ideas? No. Okay. So this is another kind of obstacle. Yeah, wrong views, disturbing emotions, they can limit the range of what we can do. So we have to be careful about these things because this is something we can do something about. A further difficulty in knowing objects is that some objects are so subtle, profound, or vast that the ordinary mind is unable to cognize them. To know these objects, single-pointed concentration and or wisdom that is freed from wrong conceptions is needed. Okay, so for example, the Brahma realm. Can we see the Brahma realm with our eyes? You know, how do we know the Brahma realm? We have to develop samadhi. We have to develop shamatha. Yeah. And then based on shamatha, we can gain supernormal powers. And with those powers, then we can know the Brahma realm. And we know with our own direct experience that it exists. Okay? Or to know emptiness, the lack of inherent existence. Yeah. Our normal mind can't know it. We need directly. It can develop an inferential realization, but it can't know it directly. For that, we need shamatha and vipassana. Okay? Another type of obstruction are subtle defilements on the mind that produce false appearances. So these are the false appearances that I was speaking of earlier, where things appear to have some independent essence, even though they don't. So these false appearances prevent us from attaining Buddhahood. the state of omniscient mind. When these subtle defilements are removed, the mind will naturally perceive all phenomena. So it's some subtle defilement on our mind stream that prevents us from knowing all phenomena. Okay? So the main obstruction to omniscience are the latencies of afflictions, the subtle appearance of inherent existence they produce, and the defilement preventing seeing the two truths simultaneously. After the wisdom realizing ultimate reality eliminates the afflictive obscurations that keep us in samsara, it must cleanse the cognitive obscurations from the mind. When every last defilement is removed, the mind is totally purified and its good qualities fully developed. This is the state of Buddhahood in which the capabilities of the mind have no limits. The effectiveness of a Buddha's activities depend not on the abilities of that Buddha, but on the receptivity of sentient beings. So from the side of the Buddha, there's no limitations to benefit sentient beings, but our receptivity is what determines whether the activities of the Buddha can really affect us. Okay. Then, His Holiness goes on and talks again about, is liberation possible? And he gives some reasons for it here. Okay, so to review, disturbing emotions and wrong views are called afflictions or klesa, because when they arise in the mind, they afflict and disturb our mental peace. In addition, they motivate us to do actions that disturb and afflict the peace of others. Fortunately, these afflictions can be removed, enabling us to attain liberation or nirvana, a true state of peace that does not fluctuate according to external circumstances. So that's one quality of nirvana. Yeah? It doesn't go up and down, in and out. It doesn't fluctuate in any way. It's permanent. It's stable. Once we've attained it, it never disappears. Okay. So several factors make liberation possible. So the first factor is the basic or true nature of the mind is pure. That's nice to hear, isn't it? Yeah? The basic nature of our mind isn't a mess. It's something pure. Okay? So the basic nature of the mind is clear like water. Any dirt in a glass of water isn't the nature of the water and can be removed. Okay? No matter how murky the water may be, its essential quality of clarity is never lost. Okay, so similarly, the basic conventional nature of the mind is clear and cognizant. It is the basis upon which awakening can be attained, and as such, it is the ultimate source of our confidence that awakening is possible. Inanimate objects such as stones and trees cannot attain awakening because they lack the qualities of clarity and cognizance that only a mind possesses. Okay? So this fact that the conventional mind, has the qualities of clarity and cognizance that are its very nature and can never be separated from it, and can never cease, because one moment of mind produces the next moment of mind. Yeah, this means that when we eliminate the defilements, that pure, clear light nature of the conventional mind still remains. And if we direct it, when it doesn't have obscurations, then, as we saw in the previous section, it can naturally apprehend phenomena. There's no obstructions preventing it. Okay? Then, a second reason why liberation is possible. The afflictions are adventitious, so they are not part of the nature of the mind. Okay? So adventitious means temporary. So here, well, let me keep reading and then. Yeah. Afflictions have not penetrated into the basic nature of the mind. The fact that afflictions are not always present in the mind indicates that every instance of the mind's clarity and cognizance is not associated with afflictions. Sometimes our mind is peaceful and calm. Afflictions may arise and after a while pass away. If they were inherently part of the true nature of the mind, they would always be present and it would be impossible to eliminate them. But this is not the case. Okay? So if the afflictions were embedded in the nature of our mind, then we could not eliminate them. They would always be there. But we can see from our own experience that we may be angry at one moment, and later on, we're not angry. Okay? If the anger were part of the nature of our mind, if it were embedded in the nature of the mind, then it would always be present. It could never be removed. Yeah. But it comes and it goes. And if we can remove it totally, great, because then it will never reappear. Okay. So the purest form of the mind is the fundamental innate clear light mind. In ordinary beings, this subtle clear light mind is always neutral. It has never been and can never become non-virtuous. By engaging in special yogic practices, it can be transformed into a virtuous state. From this perspective, too, we see that defilements are not inherent in the nature of the mind. Okay, so when it says the purest nature of the mind is the fundamental innate mind of clear light, this is an extremely subtle mind. Yeah, it's not the mind of our gross consciousnesses. Yeah, it's not, because our we're so controlled by sense objects, that level of consciousness is very gross. Thinking is a little bit subtler, but our mind of thought is also comparatively gross. The mind of samadhi is more subtle. Okay. But this fundamental innate clear light mind is the subtlest mind altogether. Yeah. And it's very difficult to make it manifest, but it's possible. Then, another reason why liberation is impossible, here's number 3, it is possible to cultivate powerful antidotes, realistic and beneficial mental states that eradicate the afflictions. Saying that defilements are adventitious means that when suitable conditions are present, the defilements can be removed from the basic nature of the mind. It does not mean that at one time afflictions did not exist and later came into existence. Rather, afflictions are beginningless and have continuously obscured our minds until now. But these afflictions can be ceased completely when the proper antidote is applied. Okay? So, we have ignorance, anger, and attachment. These are wrong consciousnesses. There are correct consciousnesses that see things as they actually are. And when we activate the wisdom that sees things as they actually are, that wisdom can eliminate all these defilements. Okay? Then another reason nirvana can be attained, or full awakening can be attained, is that good qualities can be cultivated limitlessly. So a Buddha is somebody with limitless good qualities. Limitless love and compassion, omniscient mind, complete. A Buddha doesn't need effort to do anything. All the Buddha's virtuous activities flow totally effortlessly, spontaneously. That's quite amazing, the potential of our mind. Okay? So the clear and cognizant nature of the mind is a stable basis for the cultivation of excellent qualities. Okay? So this clear and cognizant nature of the mind is firm and continual. There is nothing that can cease it. So our mind can never go out of existence. Okay? For example, if we continuously boil water, it will dry up and nothing will remain. There is no basis for limitlessly boiling water. Good qualities cannot be cultivated limitlessly on an unstable basis, such as the physical body, because the physical body falls ill, ages, and dies. However, the clear light mind is stable and is a stable and continuous basis for cultivating good qualities. The more we train in excellent qualities, the more these qualities will be enhanced limitlessly until they are fully perfected in the state of Buddhahood. So what this is meaning is that, the clear and cognizant nature of our mind is continuous, moment to moment to moment. And on that basis, if we practice the Dharma, we can develop our good qualities. Yeah? So we develop some little bit of compassion. We practice more, we develop greater compassion. We keep practicing, we can develop the compassion of bodhisattvas and Buddhas. Okay, it's possible to do because the clear and cognizant nature of the mind is a stable basis. It's like, when you build Buddhist library, you have to have a stable basis. Yeah. If you built this on top of the ocean, you're not going to be able to build Buddhist library. It would sink. The water isn't a stable basis. So in the same way, the clear and cognizant nature of the mind is a stable basis. Okay? Another reason is the mind can become habituated to good qualities that can be built up cumulatively. Now here, His Holiness, I won't read you the whole thing, but in short, what he's saying is when we practice, we can build up our good qualities, and we don't need to start all over every time we meditate, building up good qualities, if we practice continuously. So he gives the analogy of a high jumper. Yeah. When somebody does high jumping, they have to clear the space that they cleared before, plus jump higher in order to increase their ability. Okay. So there's a limit to high jumping, because you always have to go over the part that you've jumped, the height that you've jumped before, plus some. When developing our qualities, internal qualities, it's not like that. Yeah? If we practice continuously, we develop some compassion or some wisdom today, then on that basis, tomorrow, we can start where we left off and develop a bit more compassion and wisdom the next day. Then the day after that, we start with where we left off on the previous day and can build upon that. Okay? And so in that way, our good qualities can keep on being developed without any limit. Okay? Then, another quality here. You see, His Holiness gives very thorough explanations, doesn't he? Yeah. So good qualities can be enhanced but never diminished by reasoning and wisdom. Okay? So constructive attitudes and emotions have a valid support in reasoning and wisdom. And this is something the Buddha really emphasized. We don't develop good qualities based on blind faith. Yeah? We have to understand, use reasoning, think things through, and that reasoning and the wisdom we develop with it, enables the qualities that we develop to continuously be developed, because they become stable that way. Okay? So these good qualities can never be harmed by the wisdom realizing reality. Yeah? Wisdom realizing reality cannot harm good qualities. It reinforces good qualities. Compassion, faith, integrity, generosity, concentration, and all other excellent qualities can be cultivated together with wisdom and are enhanced with wisdom. For this reason, too, they can be cultivated limitlessly. So there's a lot to think about in this. Yeah, there's a lot. You're just getting the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, and so you have to, go home and think about these points. Maybe you have to even listen to the talk again and take some notes so you remember the points, and then think about them. But as we do, then we really see that how the Buddha explained things, why it's possible to attain nirvana, why it's possible to attain full awakening, then we can really gain confidence in this that is based on our own wisdom, based on reasoning. Yeah. And then that makes it very stable, because if our understanding is not based on wisdom, then some other person comes along and talks about some other philosophy, and then we go, oh, okay, I'll convert, I'll become, I'll join your philosophy. Why does that happen? Because people haven't understood the Buddha's teachings on a deep level yet. Yeah, but when we really use reasoning and wisdom, then people can teach us they can explain all sorts of stuff to us. But then we have the ability to discern, this is true, this is false. Yeah, this is something that I will follow, this is something that is not true and I will not follow. Yeah, but that depends on developing our own wisdom. Yeah? And wisdom is not developed by praying to have wisdom. Okay? We have to think, we have to use our human brain and our human mind, and, consider things deeply. Not just say, oh, the Buddha said it, I believe. Okay? But think deeply about things. Then our understanding is very firm. Okay, so we have a little bit of time for a few questions. I don't know about answers, but we can try with the questions and the comments. And there's a mic you can use.
Yes. Okay, good afternoon, Venerable. My question is, as Buddhists, we strive to become enlightened or become a Buddha. And one quality of becoming enlightened or becoming a Buddha is that we have miraculous powers. And yet with your powers, we can't still prevent a person's bad karma from ripening. So how else as a Buddha, if I were to reach that state, can we actually benefit sentient beings?
Okay, they say that the Buddha's power and sentient beings' karma are kind of equal in force. So the Buddhas may have miraculous power, but when our karma is, strong and hindering it, then we are not receptive to the Buddha's activities. Yeah. When our karma is more malleable, when we have more virtuous karma, then the Buddha's activities can influence us. The chief way the Buddha leads us to awakening is through teaching us the Dharma. It's not through preventing earthquakes and floods. Okay? Earthquakes, floods, these are natural things that have their own sources in physical laws. Yeah? So the law of karma, of Buddha's ability, this is something different than the physical laws. Our karma can influence whether we're present during a natural disaster. Yeah. So if our karma is flexible, then, maybe a Buddha manifests in such a way that we make a decision, not to go to Bali at the time the volcano's exploding. Okay. But the Buddha can't prevent the volcano from exploding. In general, that's not the way we talk about the Buddha's powers. Yeah. So also, when we're sick, if we pray to the Buddha, may I get well? Yeah. It depends. If we have a lot of virtuous karma, maybe by the force of our prayers, that virtuous karma can ripen. But, really when we're sick and we pray to the Buddha, what we really need also to be praying is, may I develop the wisdom to handle my sickness and transform it into the path to awakening. Okay. So it's not that the Buddha's going to zoom down and, like that your illness is going to be gone. Yeah. But how is the Buddha going to help us? Through the teachings. If we learn the teachings well, then when we're sick, we know how to think and how to practice during our illness. And in that way, we transform the illness into the path to awakening. Does this answer your question okay?
Venerable Chodron, just to clarify, question that you mentioned just now regarding to cultivate the clear and light mind. Does it has to do with 37 aids to enlightenment, as well as the cultivation of the Brahma Vihara, because which is limitless and direction in all direction, in all depth.
Yeah. Okay, so on the basis of the clear and cognizant nature of the mind, then if we practice the four Brahma Viharas, we can cultivate them limitlessly. You know, the Buddha has limitless love, compassion, joy, and equanimity that spread in all directions to all beings, and that doesn't get worn out. Yeah, Buddha's love is not like, okay, I want you to be happy and I helped you now, but don't call me tomorrow. Okay? You know, the Buddha's love doesn't exhaust. The 37 aids to awakening, also, those are ways that we cultivate our wisdom. Okay? And like I said before, cultivating our wisdom is another way to cultivate our good qualities. Yeah? So we see, you know, why did the Buddha give so many different teachings? Because there's a lot of good qualities to cultivate. Yeah, somebody asked me the other day, is there one meditation we can do and then that'll kind of take care of it all? And I said, no, because our mind is very complex. We have many different kinds of afflictions. They need to be handled differently in different ways. You know, even though the wisdom realizing reality will eliminate all of them, still until that time, excuse me, we need to handle afflictions differently. We need to develop not only the compassionate side of ourselves, but also the wisdom side. So the meditations to develop these qualities are different. Yeah? So there's a lot of different things we need to do, different kinds of merit, different kinds of wisdom. Yeah. This person kept pushing me. He wanted one easy and way to attain an awakening. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't tell it to you. Okay.
Venerable Chodron, I I have to say something first, which is that I took the advice you gave me this morning about the dung beetle and giving up the dung and the ego. And I have to tell you that I did that deal over lunch, and it was one of the hardest things that I've done. But yet, looking back, it wasn't so difficult. And I take a lot of comfort in the words that you gave me this morning about not being a victim, and I don't have to do anything. I choose to do it, right? And I chose, and it feels really good. So my question to you is this. Right now, I'm very anxious that tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to say, oh my God, Venerable Chodron told me to do that and I actually did it and now I regret it and I want my dung back. So over the next day, week, and year,
The mic just went off. Over the next day and year. Okay. So first of all, I didn't tell you to do it. Okay? You chose to do it. I gave you advice, but you chose, you use your own wisdom. Okay? So what to do in the future? You fall back on your own wisdom. Yeah? You had thought about the situation, you knew the pros and cons, there was a good reason why you made the decision that you did. So if you begin to get anxious, go back to the reason why you made that decision. Yeah, you made that decision because you were tired of eating dung. Yeah, so good for you. Okay? Yeah, the microphone went out.
Hello.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Venerable Chodron. In the beginning, you mentioned there's no independent self that moves from body to body. Can you explain the concept of reincarnation in the Tibetan tradition? Because it seems to suggest there is an independent self that moves from lifetime to lifetime.
Yeah. No, the idea of rebirth in the Tibetan tradition is the same as it is in the Pali tradition. Yeah, there's no difference in that. The idea, you might be asking, well, the Tibetans identify, the next rebirth of a very well-known Lama.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
Yeah.
Because there's a continuity of mind. Yeah. Even in this life, there's a continuity. One moment of clarity and awareness brings the next moment, brings the next moment. We can see there's a continuity of our body from starting out being this big, growing into a fetus, getting born, becoming a toddler, a teenager, an adult, senior citizen. There's a continuity of the body, yeah. Even after death, there's a continuity of the body. It decays and the worms have lunch, okay? Or you burn it and, the ingredients go into the sky. In the same way, the consciousness has a continuity. One moment causing the next moment, yeah. But precisely because one moment causes the next moment, there can't be a permanent soul. Because something that's permanent does not change moment to moment. It is not caused by, it's not affected by causes and conditions. So there's no permanent self or soul that goes from one birth to the next. The Tibetans just have this cultural thing of identifying rebirth. But also, we have rebirths, yeah. And His Holiness tells the story of one little girl in India who, she's 4 or 5 years old, and she started saying, I want to go back to my old village and see my mother and father. And eventually her parents of this life took her back there. She knew who her mother and father were. She knew the name of the village. Okay? So this kind of thing happens precisely because there isn't a soul, because things change. Okay? Makes some sense?
Yeah. Can I have a follow-up question on the quality? Doesn't diminish. So if I have cultivated good qualities, and if I am reborn as a turkey, would I have a bird brain?
If you get born as a turkey, yes, you have a bird brain. But the thing is, the way karma is, okay, we create many, many karmas throughout our life. So each karma, this is just an analogy, don't think of anything physical, but the different karmas that we create from fully complete actions are like planting different seeds in a field. Yeah? Some seeds are for daisies, some seeds are for weeds, some seeds are for durian, some seeds are for, apples, many different things. Now, which seed is going to ripen depends on which one you water. So at the end of this lifetime, we have many different seeds. And, you know, only one or sometimes a combination of one or two together ripen to form the next rebirth. The other seeds are still there. Yeah. So let's say, you know, I hope this doesn't happen, but let's say at the end of this life, you know, we're really grabbing onto material things. We don't want to separate from family and from friends. We're grabbing, and then that makes a seed of karma ripen, and it's a seed of negative karma. And so that ripens, and then we take a turkey rebirth. Yeah. But the seeds of the good karma that you've created this afternoon are still on the continuity of that consciousness. None of these things are permanent and fixed. They're all changing moment to moment. But that seed's still there. And at the end of the turkey rebirth, let's say you happen to be a turkey at the Abbey, and one of the nuns there sees that you're dying and says prayers over you and mantras over you while you're dying. And that that nourishes the seed of the good karma you've created here to ripen, so that the lifetime after that you get reborn as a human being. Okay? And all this happens precisely because there is not a soul or a self. Okay? So, yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon, Venerable. So just wanted to ask, afflictions are depending arising, right? They are not inherently there. So therefore the absence of it is also depending arising.
What do you mean the essence?
The absence.
Oh, the absence.
Yeah. The cessation.
No. When we have eliminated the afflictions, then the absence of those afflictions never changes. So that the cessation, when we talk about true cessations, true cessations are permanent in that they do not change moment to moment. They also are eternal. There is no cause once you have eliminated an affliction completely. There's no cause for that affliction ever to appear in your mind again.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Until we've eliminated them completely, they can go into a very subtle, like seed form, and then come up again. But once they're cut off, that's it.
Okay, thank you. And also another question is, Nirvana, is it at a conventional truth level or ultimate?
Nirvana is an
ultimate truth. Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, dear Venerable, I know you'll be teaching Pure Land only on Wednesday, but I would like to ask, I mean, is it easier that, when if we go Pure Land and we practice from there and to reach Nirvana, then to, we don't know what is our next rebirth. We can be reborn as animal, then we may not even have opportunity to learn Dharma.
Right. And that's precisely why many people seek rebirth in the Pure Land. Okay. But you got to come on Wednesday. One person over here has a question.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Sorry, my question may be out of your topic because I'm very lost actually. What is the difference between, I'm here today, whether I plan it or not, I'm here with you, you 缘分, in Chinese that I think the word to use is fate, that I'm here. So if I plan to be here, I'm here. If I'm not planning to be here, I'm also here. So how is this related, or how is it related in...
I'm not sure I understand the question. Because in Buddhism, there's no fate.
缘分 is not, I think the wrong translation, sorry. Affinity. It's affinity.
Okay, there's conditions that things happen due to causes and conditions. What do you mean, whether you like it or not? You chose to come here. You chose to come here, right? Yes. We're all present here because of the causes and conditions that came together for all of us to be here. There's no governing force in the universe that made us all come here today. Yeah. There's no governing force in the universe. There's no deity or God or anything like that made us all come here. It's all, a very complex system of causes and conditions. Yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes, a lot of our choices are based on afflictions. So in that way, when the mind is overpowered by afflictions, it's not totally free. So we're trying to attain nirvana, trying to attain liberation and awakening, to overcome the causes and conditions that bring suffering and that bring problems. Okay? But everything, happens due to causes and conditions. Freedom does not mean, oh, I want to speak Chinese, so now I know Chinese, I need to create the causes and conditions. So first I need to figure out which part of the book is up, because, when you don't know the Chinese characters, which way is up in the book, you don't know. Okay? I can't hear the difference in tones. They all sound the same to me. Yeah? So these things, you need to learn them. Yeah. Freedom does not mean that there are no causes and conditions. Freedom means that you know how to use causes and conditions to bring about the kinds of things that you want, that are virtuous, that are good for you and others. Okay. So, last question.
Hi, Venerable Chodron. Hi. I wanted to ask you a question about the 4 different levels or stages of nirvana that you mentioned earlier. So you mentioned that the second stage is a stage of an arahat with remainder. So it seemed to imply that from that third to the second stage is...
They aren't stages. They aren't consecutive stages. They're just different types of nirvana.
Okay, so actually my main question is the first type you mentioned about the nirvana just through emptiness. So does that mean that if a person sort of attains the nirvana of that particular sort, so he or she is still in samsara, since to get out of samsara, it has to be moving from with remainder to without remainder.
Okay, so the natural nirvana, remember I said it's not actually nirvana? Because it's not, the natural nirvana is not something you attain. Phenomena are natural by their, just their own way of existence, empty of inherent existence. So there's nothing to attain with natural nirvana. That's why I said it's called nirvana, but it's not actually nirvana. It's not attained. It's just the nature of reality.
Okay, so just a quick follow-up. So does that happen through, you mentioned something about inference realization, or?
You mean how do we realize?
Yes, that natural nirvana.
Okay.
Is it through vipassana, like you mentioned, or through just the inference, like looking at things around and realizing?
Okay, the way to realize emptiness is the Buddha taught hearing or learning, thinking, and meditating. So that's the process. First we have to learn. So we hear what emptiness is, we hear the arguments proving emptiness, refuting independent existence. Then second, we think about those arguments, we discuss them with other people, we make sure we have the proper understanding. And then third, we meditate on that and unify our insight with serenity so that it becomes a direct, non-conceptual understanding. So that's the way the realization occurs.
Thank you.
Okay? So, I know there's millions more questions, but we're out of time. Okay, so let's just sit for a minute and rejoice at what we've learned, rejoice at the merit we created, rejoice that we chose to do something virtuous this afternoon. Rejoice at all the goodness in the world, at the merit everybody here created. Rejoice that we're all creating the causes for full awakening. And then let's dedicate that merit, send it out into the universe. You can even think of it as light at your heart that you're sending out that touches all the living beings. And then we'll dedicate. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born has no decline, but increase forevermore.